So right now, like inside your head, your brain is actually actively destroying neural pathways.
Yeah, this really aggressive biological pruning
Right.
process.
It's basically designed to save energy. And I feel like if you've ever tried and then just completely failed to learn a new language, this exact biological process is likely why.
Oh, absolutely.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by, the whole idea of achieving fluency, this stack of sources is just custom tailored for you.
It really is. I mean, we're pulling from this fascinating intersection of fields today.
Yeah, we really are.
We have the personal routines of world-class polyglots people like Luca Lampariello and Steve Kaufman,
Right.
and we're combining those with the behavioral psychology of habit formation, so James Clear and BJ Fogg. Plus, we're even looking at the science of circadian rhythms.
And cognitive behavioral therapy, too. Because our mission for this deep dive is to explore exactly how to identify the limiting beliefs that, hold you back from language fluency.
Right, and systematically replace those beliefs with a tiny, highly productive, brain-friendly daily priority.
Exactly. We are not just going over a list of flashcard apps today.
No, not at all.
We're talking about how to literally rewire your brain to do the work without that heavy, just dreadful feeling of being overwhelmed.
Yeah, because to build that new neurological architecture, you first have to, you have to clear out the mental roadblocks
The
or
self-fulfilling prophecies.
exactly, the things that stop a learner before they even open a book.
So let's start with the biggest roadblock of all, the absolute classic excuse, which is, I have no time.
Oh yeah, the no time myth.
Right. When we look at polyglot Luca Lampariello's approach, he views this as a total illusion. He suggests this brutal, but honestly highly effective mental shift.
It's a great shift.
Instead of saying, I have no time to learn Spanish or French or whatever your target language is, he forces his students to say out loud, language learning is not my priority.
Ouch. Yeah, that vocabulary shift changes your entire psychological posture.
It really does.
Because, I have no time makes you a passive victim of your own schedule, It implies the universe simply didn't grant you enough hours today.
Right, like you had no say in the matter.
Exactly. But shifting to it's not my priority puts you back in the driver's seat. It basically forces you to confront your daily choices and ask the natural follow-up question, which is,
Well, how could I make it a priority?
right.
It's incredibly confronting. But once you make that shift and actually decide to prioritize it, you almost immediately hit the second trap.
The all or nothing fallacy?
Yes, I see this all the time. People think if they can't sit at a, heavy oak desk with a giant stack of grammar textbooks for 3 hours a day like some hardcore academic.
Then they shouldn't even bother starting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like avoiding the gym entirely just because you don't have time to train like an Olympic weightlifter.
Which is crazy because the data in our sources consistently shows that 15 to 30 minutes daily is vastly more effective than, say, a 3-hour binge on the weekend.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and we can understand why this all-or-nothing mindset is so damaging by looking at the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh, from the sleep anxiety source.
Right, so in our CBT sources regarding sleep anxiety, a core component is challenging rigid catastrophic thinking. For an anxious sleeper, catastrophic thinking sounds like, if I don't get exactly 8 consecutive hours of perfect sleep, tomorrow is completely ruined.
And so they just lie awake, stressing about not sleeping,
Yeah.
which literally guarantees they won't sleep. The anxiety itself becomes the obstacle.
Exactly. And for a language learner, that same catastrophic thinking sounds like, if I don't study perfectly for an hour today, I'm losing my progress and the day is totally wasted.
Right.
But CBT teaches us to deliberately dismantle that rigid thinking. Any exposure to the language is a win.
I mean, I understand challenging that catastrophic thinking, but let's be realistic for a second here.
Right.
What if someone is genuinely just exhausted?
Completely wiped out.
Yeah, they've worked a 10-hour day, they've cooked dinner, they're sitting on the couch feeling completely drained, and they're basically just waiting for a wave of motivation to strike before they open their language app.
Ah, well, that is the motivation myth.
The motivation myth.
Yeah, motivation is an inherently unreliable, fragile emotional state. It fluctuates wildly based on your stress levels, how much you slept, your blood sugar, and a dozen other variables entirely outside your control.
No, you can't depend on it.
Not at all. Building a learning habit on motivation is literally like building a house on quicksand. James Clear points out this brilliant insight about elite athletes.
Oh, right. I remember this.
Yeah, the difference between a champion and an average athlete isn't some infinite mystical well of passion. It is simply their ability to train through the boredom.
They just put the reps in even when they absolutely do not feel like it.
Exactly. Action must precede motivation.
Okay, let's unpack this. So if motivation is practically useless for long-term consistency, and we know we can't rely on it, how do we actually get ourselves to do the work? Like, how do we hack the system?
Well, we look at how to biologically hardwire this new priority into your brain. And to do that, we need to understand a neurological phenomenon called synaptic pruning.
Right, James Clear highlights a study from Oxford University that completely flipped my understanding of the brain.
The one with the babies.
Yes.
Yeah.
They compared the brains of newborn babies to adult brains. And naturally, you'd assume adults have way more neurons, right? Because we know how to do complex things like drive cars and pay taxes.
But babies actually have 41% more neurons than the average adult.
It's wild. This seems so counterintuitive.
It does until you look at it as this masterpiece of biological efficiency. I mean, a baby's brain is essentially a massive, chaotic, blank canvas. It has massive potential, but really weak connections. As you age, your brain aggressively prunes away the connections between neurons you don't use. And at the exact same time, it's building and fortifying hyper-fast, incredibly strong connections for the skills you actually use every day.
So, if the brain is constantly pruning unused connections, learning a language is literally a biological use it or lose it situation, like a city planner.
A city planner.
Yeah, like if a dirt road on the edge of town isn't getting any traffic, the city stops paving it to save money. And eventually, it just gets completely overgrown.
That is the perfect analogy. The brain's primary objective is to conserve energy. I mean, the human brain consumes a massive amount of glucose, up to 20% of the body's entire energy supply.
Wow.
20%.
Yeah. So maintaining complex neural pathways that you don't actively use is just a dangerous waste of biological resources from an evolutionary standpoint.
Okay, but if the brain's default state is to conserve energy and, actively resist new difficult tasks, how do we sneak a new language past those biological defenses? Behavioral scientist B.J. Fogg actually has a model for this. His behavior model is a really simple equation. B equals MAP.
B equals MAP. Okay.
Behavior equals motivation times ability times prompt.
Right. And since we just agreed that motivation, the M, fluctuates and is just a terrible foundation, we have to max out the A, the ability, and rely heavily on the P, the prompt.
Exactly. To maximize ability, you shrink the task so small that it basically bypasses the brain's natural resistance to expending energy.
And this is the foundation of Fogg's tiny habits concept, right?
Yes.
Often called the 5-minute rule.
Yes. Fogg's personal story on this is hilarious, actually.
Well, the push-ups?
Yeah. He wanted to get in shape, but instead of writing out this massive hour-long gym routine that he would inevitably quit, his tiny habit was just doing 2 push-ups. That is it.
Just 2 push-ups.
After he used the bathroom, he would drop and do 2 push-ups. But by sheer force of inertia, once he was already down on the floor, those 2 push-ups naturally grew into a habit of 70 push-ups a day.
Because he was already there. He shrank the task to be so incredibly small that his brain didn't throw up its energy conservation alarm bells.
Exactly. Telling yourself, I'm going to study advanced French subjunctive grammar for an hour, triggers immediate psychological resistance.
Oh, I'm stressed just hearing that.
Right. But telling yourself, I'm going to review flashcards for exactly 3 minutes, flies completely under the brain's radar.
Okay, so we've made the task tiny to maximize our ability. Now we need the prompt. We need a reliable trigger.
Yes, the P in the equation.
And looking at the daily routines of these highly successful polyglots in our sources, they almost always anchor this trigger to the morning. Like Steve Kaufman listening to Arabic or Persian while making espresso.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense to do it when the house is quiet, but is there a physiological reason these experts all choose the first hour of the day?
There actually is. It comes down to something called the cortisol awakening response, or CAR.
CAR. Cortisol gets a bad rap, doesn't it?
It does. Cortisol often gets a bad reputation in the media as purely a stress hormone, but it is actually your body's natural, highly effective alarm system.
Huh.
Within the first hour of waking up, especially if you expose your eyes to natural sunlight, your cortisol levels naturally peak.
So what does that peak actually do to the brain physically?
It acts as an alerting signal that physically changes the chemical environment of your brain. It maximizes mental concentration, boosts alertness, and crucially, it increases synaptic plasticity.
Plasticity meaning the brain is more moldable.
Exactly. Your neurons are physically more malleable and ready to forge new connections in that morning window than they are at, say, 8 Bohr p.m. after a long day of making decisions.
So your brain is basically primed, warm, and ready to be molded. So how do we guarantee we actually use that prime high plasticity time?
We use a technique championed by both James Clear and B.J. Fogg called habit stacking.
Habit stacking. The formula is beautifully simple.
Ah.
After I do my current habit, I will do my new tiny habit.
Right. And this implicitly solves the two biggest hurdles of forming any new routine, which are time and location.
You don't have to burn cognitive energy deciding when or where to study. The existing habit already dictates it for you.
Exactly.
Habit stacking is like attaching a new train car to a massive locomotive that's already flying down the tracks. Like the momentum is already there, you just hook the new task onto it.
I love that analogy.
So for example, your Sega stack could be, after I pour my morning coffee, I will read one foreign headline. Or, after I turn on the shower, I will practice rolling my R's.
Right. You are entirely removing the need for daily decision-making. And to handle those chaotic, unpredictable days where, your alarm doesn't go off and everything just goes wrong,
Which happens to all of us.
James Clear offers a critical fail-safe, the never miss twice rule.
Never miss twice.
Yeah. If your schedule blows up and you miss your morning coffee stack, you don't catastrophize. You don't let that CBT anxiety take over. You just make absolute sure you hit that tiny habit the next day.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We've carved out this automatic, tiny morning habit stack.
Yeah.
But what exactly are you supposed to do with those 3 to 5 minutes to actually achieve fluency?
That's the big question.
Because the sources point to a very specific goal. Training your brain to escape what linguists call the translation trap.
Yes, the translation trap.
Yeah.
It's the invisible barrier that makes speaking a new language feel so incredibly exhausting for beginners.
It really is exhausting.
It's this grueling 5-step mental bottleneck. Step 1, you hear the foreign input. Step 2, your brain frantically decodes that input into your native language.
Right.
Step 3, you formulate your reply in your native language. Step 4, you translate that reply back into the target language. And finally, step 5, you actually speak.
If you are listening to this and you've ever been in a conversation in a foreign language, you know exactly what this feels like.
Oh.
It's that deer in the headlights moment where your brain feels like a computer buffering. I hear someone ask a question, I translate it in my head, I figure out my answer in English, I search for the foreign vocabulary to match my English thought, and then I finally stutter it out.
It's so much work.
It burns massive amounts of mental energy just to ask where the bathroom is.
It does, which is why the ultimate goal of language learning is to cut that exhausting 5-step trap down to a 3-step flow state.
3 steps instead of 5.
Right. You hear the input, you think the concept directly in the target language, and you speak. No middleman.
And the morning routine we just built is the perfect laboratory to build this flow state. Rachel's English provides a highly practical framework for doing this, starting with a technique called object naming.
Object naming.
Yeah. When you walk into the bathroom in the morning, you don't look at the sink, think the word sink in English, and then translate it. You look at the physical object and immediately name it out loud in your target language.
The psycholinguistic context of this practice is just vital. By connecting the physical, tangible object directly to the foreign word, you are entirely bypassing your native language's neural pathway.
You're cutting English out entirely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are building a direct, independent association in that fresh morning brain.
You point at the mirror, the faucet, the towel, and you just name them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to point out the psychological relief of this method.
Oh, doing it alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Doing this alone, in your bathroom at 7 a.m., completely eliminates the embarrassment factor. When you're trying to speak to a native speaker, the fear of judgment is paralyzed.
Terrifying, yeah.
But there are no grammar police hiding behind your shower curtain. If you mispronounce the word for toothbrush, absolutely nothing happens.
Nothing at all. And once you master the basic objects in your environment, Rachel's English suggests moving to simple sentences using the present continuous tense.
Okay, so sentences.
Right. You become the narrator of your own mundane morning routine.
You're just talking to yourself.
Right.
Like, I am hitting the snooze button, the coffee is brewing, these jeans are too tight. You're forcing your internal monologue to operate in the new language before the stress of the workday takes over.
Yeah, and if you encounter a concept or word you don't know during this morning narration, the strategy is to look it up, using an English-only or learner's dictionary in the target language rather than a direct translation dictionary.
That's a great tip.
Again, the mechanism here is to keep your brain operating entirely within the architecture of the new language, rather than constantly commuting back and forth to your mother tongue.
So narrating your morning gets your internal monologue thinking in the language, which is huge, but it doesn't solve a massive physical problem.
The physical speaking part.
Right. Your mouth literally doesn't know how to make these new sounds yet. You can think the sentence perfectly, but when you go to say it, your tongue just trips over itself.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we train the physical muscles to keep up with the mental flow state?
Well, this brings us to a more advanced, highly effective tactic called shadowing, which was popularized by Professor Alexander Argel.
Shadowing.
Yeah. Shadowing isn't just passively listening and repeating. It is the exact copying of native speech, almost simultaneously, with about a split-second delay. You are essentially acting as an aggressive echo of the native speaker.
The sources outline a strict three-step process for this to work. First, you listen to the audio while reading the text just to understand the meaning.
Okay.
Second, you listen and repeat the speaker's words out loud while following along with the text. And third, you repeat the words out loud without the text, relying purely on your ears and mimicking their exact rhythm.
Right, but Argales has a very specific, intense requirement for his method. He insists that you do your shadowing while walking briskly outside.
I have to push back on this.
You don't buy it.
I mean, is shadowing while power walking outside really practical for someone just trying to learn basic Italian for a vacation? Aren't people going to look at you like you're crazy if you're marching down the sidewalk muttering rapidly in a foreign language?
It does sound eccentric, I'll give you that, but there is deep neurological and physiological reasoning behind why the brisk walking is essential.
Okay, what is it?
Shadowing develops something called prosody, which is the music, the pitch, and the specific rhythm of a language. When you learn a new language, you are literally training physical muscles in your jaw, tongue, and throat that you don't normally use.
Oh, wow. So it's like learning a completely new choreography for your mouth.
Precisely. The physical movement of walking briskly increases oxygen flow to the brain, which maintains high alertness, while simultaneously forcing your mouth to build that physical muscle memory in a rhythmic, continuous way.
That makes sense.
And honestly, in today's world, if you are wearing wireless headphones while walking down the street talking out loud, everyone will simply assume you are on a phone call.
That is a very fair point.
Yeah.
People are wandering around having animated conversations with the air all the time now.
Exactly.
But even with these great techniques, the habit stacking, the object naming, the outdoor shadowing, learning a language is a multi-year marathon.
It definitely is.
So how do learners keep from just getting utterly exhausted by all this structured, intense practice?
Well, burnout is the absolute enemy of consistency. So, to protect against cognitive fatigue, polyglot Luca Lampariello implements what he calls the 20% fun rule.
The 20% fun rule.
Yeah. He mandates that for every 60 minutes of language study you do, at least 12 minutes, which is exactly 20%, must be devoted to pure, unfiltered leisure in your target language.
Pure leisure. So we are talking about watching a Netflix show with target language subtitles, playing a video game with the language settings switched over, or just listening to a pop playlist on a drive.
Right. And the mechanism behind why this works is crucial. This aligns perfectly with polyglot Steve Kaufman's philosophy of focusing on comprehensible input.
Comprehensible input.
Yeah, meaning over-translation. When you engage with content you genuinely enjoy, your brain releases dopamine. This positive chemical response naturally lowers your affective filter, which is the psychological barrier of stress and anxiety that blocks language absorption.
So it's treating the language as a tool to enjoy something rather than a math problem to be solved.
Beautifully put. Your brain needs to associate the language with pleasure and genuine narrative interest, not just the hard, glucose-burning work of grammatical deconstruction.
Right.
That 20% of fun maintains your joy and effectively prevents the cognitive fatigue that causes most people to quit.
Bringing this all together, we've covered a massive amount of ground today. We started by attacking that pervasive, no-time limiting belief, reframing language learning from a heavy burden into a conscious priority.
We did. We then looked at how to biologically anchor that new priority using BJ Fogg's B=MAP formula, deliberately tricking the brain's energy conservation systems by making the habit ridiculously tiny.
And then we leveraged the chemical peak of the cortisol awakening response to stack these tiny habits onto things we already do every single morning, like making coffee or stepping into the shower.
Right.
And we used that highly plastic brain state to escape the translation trap through direct object naming, followed by outdoor shadowing to train our physical jaw muscles.
Ultimately, the core takeaway from all these polyglots and behavioral scientists is that mastering a language is not about having an unbreakable will of steel or Olympian motivation.
No, not at all.
It is about tiny, consistent, strategic daily actions that respect how your biological brain actually functions and learns.
Which leaves us with one final fascinating concept. We talked about how the brain preems unused connections to build a completely new linguistic architecture. Well, Rachel's English suggests one final, tiny habit for the end of your day.
Oh, right.
Recapping your day in your target language right before you fall asleep. Just a quick, silent mental summary while your head is on the pillow.
And this raises an incredible point to ponder. If you are feeding your brain this target language right as it enters its deepest restorative sleep cycles, what if the ultimate sign that you have successfully pruned your old neural pathways isn't just surviving a conversation at a coffee shop?
Wait, really?
Yeah. What if the ultimate sign of fluency is the moment your subconscious brain independently generates a dream, entirely in your new language while you are fast asleep?
Wow. Think about that tonight. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.